The letter, trembling in Penelope Crawford's hands, was the only thing standing between her and complete destitution, and she had written it with such brutal honesty that she half expected the recipient to laugh himself sick before tossing it into the nearest fire. Philadelphia in 1882 was no place for a woman alone, especially one who had just buried her last remaining family member and discovered that her brother's gambling debts had consumed everything they owned. At 23 years old, Penelope found herself with three choices: the workhouse, the streets, or answering an advertisement for a mail-order bride that she had seen posted at the general store. The advertisement had been simple and straightforward, placed by a rancher in New Mexico territory, seeking a wife who could handle the isolation and hard work of frontier life. Most women, Penelope knew, would have embellished their letters with flowery language and exaggerations about their beauty and accomplishments. But Penelope had always been truthful to a fault, and she saw no point in starting a marriage based on lies. So she had written exactly what she was: plain of face, boring of personality, practical to a fault, with brown hair that refused to curl and a figure that was neither notably thin nor pleasingly plump. She could cook adequate meals, keep a clean house, and had a basic education. She possessed no musical talents, no gift for witty conversation, and no patience for romantic nonsense. The reply had arrived 3 weeks later, written in a bold, decisive hand that suggested its author wasted no time on unnecessary flourishes. Miss Crawford, I received your letter with great interest. I appreciate your honesty more than you can know. If you are as plain and boring as you claim, then I have only one request: bore me forever. A ranch is no place for delicate sensibilities or dramatic temperaments. I need a partner who can face life's challenges without falling apart. If you can do that, then we will suit each other well. Enclosed is money for your passage to Columbus, New Mexico territory. I will meet you at the train station on the 15th of September. Sincerely, Owen Russell. Those 4 words had echoed in her mind ever since. Bore me forever. Not a declaration of love, certainly, but something that felt more solid and real than any flowery poetry could have been. Here was a man who valued steadiness over flash, substance over style. Perhaps, Penelope had thought, this could work after all. Now, standing on the train platform in Columbus on a scorching September afternoon, her few belongings packed into 2 worn carpetbags, Penelope wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. The town was smaller than she had imagined, a collection of adobe buildings and wooden structures scattered across the dusty landscape. Mountains rose in the distance, purple and imposing against the bright blue sky. The air was different here, dry and hot in a way that Philadelphia never was, and she could already feel sweat forming beneath her high collar. The other passengers dispersed quickly, met by family or heading toward the town's single hotel. Penelope stood alone on the platform, scanning the faces of the few men still present. None of them paid her any attention, and she felt her anxiety rising. What if Owen Russell had changed his mind? What if he had seen her step off the train and decided she was even plainer than advertised? Miss Crawford. She turned toward the voice and found herself looking up at a man who seemed to have been carved from the landscape itself. Owen Russell was tall and lean, with sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of the New Mexico sky. He wore work-worn clothes, a wide-brimmed hat and boots covered in dust. His face was angular and serious, with lines around his eyes that suggested he spent most of his time squinting into the sun. He was not handsome in any conventional sense, but there was something solid and reliable about him that made Penelope's racing heart slow just a bit. "Mr. Russell," she said, grateful that her voice came out steady. "Yes, I am Penelope Crawford." He studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Penelope forced herself to stand still under his scrutiny, refusing to fidget or look away. She had told him exactly what to expect, and she would not apologize for being precisely what she had claimed to be. "You are honest," he finally said, and she could not tell if he was pleased or disappointed. "That is good. I value honesty above all things." "Then we start on solid ground," Penelope replied. "I have no talent for deception." Something flickered in his eyes, something that might have been approval or amusement. "My wagon is this way. The ranch is about 10 miles out. We can be there before sundown if we leave now." He picked up her bags without asking, which Penelope appreciated. She was tired of making decisions, tired of carrying burdens alone. Following him to a sturdy wagon hitched to 2 patient horses, she accepted his hand up onto the seat. His grip was strong and calloused, the hand of a man who worked with his body every day. As they drove out of Columbus, Owen pointed out landmarks: the church, the general store, the saloon, the smithy. His voice was deep and measured, and he did not seem to expect much response from her. Penelope was grateful for this, as it gave her time to absorb the strangeness of her new surroundings. The landscape was unlike anything she had known in Philadelphia. Here, everything was vast and open, the sky impossibly wide, the horizon stretching endlessly in all directions. Scrub, brush, and cacti dotted the red earth, and mountains rose like sentinels in the distance. It was beautiful in a harsh, unforgiving way. "It is very different from the city," she finally said, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between them. "Do you regret coming?" Owen asked, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. Penelope considered the question seriously. "No, there was nothing for me in Philadelphia. Whatever challenges this place holds, they cannot be worse than the alternative I faced." "That is a grim assessment of your prospects." "It is an honest one." He glanced at her then, really looked at her, and something in his expression softened. "I appreciate honesty, Miss Crawford. My first wife died 3 years ago in childbirth, along with our daughter. For a long time, I thought I would never marry again. But a ranch this size is too much for one person, and I found I was tired of being alone. I do not expect romance or grand passion. I expect partnership and respect. Can you give me that?" The bluntness of his words should have shocked her, but instead, Penelope felt relief wash over her. Here was a man who understood what she understood, that life was difficult and often disappointing, and the best one could hope for was to face it with someone steady at your side. "Yes," she said simply, "I can give you that." They arrived at the ranch as the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The house was adobe, low and practical, with a covered porch and shuttered windows. Outbuildings dotted the property: a barn, a stable, a chicken coop, and various sheds. Penelope could see cattle grazing in the distance, and the sound of lowing carried on the evening breeze. Owen helped her down from the wagon and carried her bags inside. The interior of the house was sparse but clean, with whitewashed walls and simple furniture. A large fireplace dominated one wall of the main room, and doorways led off to what Penelope assumed were bedrooms and a kitchen. "I have been staying in the smaller bedroom," Owen said, setting her bags down. "The larger one is yours until we are married. The preacher can come out from town in 3 days if that suits you. I thought you might want time to settle in first." "That is very considerate," Penelope said, surprised by his thoughtfulness. 3 days will be sufficient." Owen nodded, then seemed uncertain for the first time since she had met him. "Are you hungry? I am not much of a cook, but I can manage basic meals." "I can cook," Penelope said. "If you will show me the kitchen, I will prepare something for us both." Relief crossed his face. "That would be welcome. I will see to the horses and then show you where everything is." Left alone in the main room, Penelope took a deep breath and looked around what would be her home. It was not what she had imagined her life would become, standing in an adobe house in the New Mexico territory, preparing to marry a man she had just met. But it was honest and real, and there was something comforting about that. When Owen returned, he gave her a tour of the kitchen, pointing out where supplies were kept and apologizing for the limited selection. Penelope assured him she could work with what was available and set about preparing a simple meal of beans, bacon, and biscuits. It was nothing fancy, but it was filling and hot, and Owen ate with the appetite of a man who had been making do with his own poor cooking for too long. "This is very good," he said, mopping up the last of his beans with a biscuit. "Better than anything I have managed in months." "It is basic fare," Penelope said, "but I can do better with time to plan and perhaps a few more supplies from town. We can go into Columbus tomorrow if you like. You will need things for the house, and I should introduce you to people in town. They will be curious about my new wife." The word wife hung in the air between them, strange and foreign. Penelope nodded, pushing her own plate away. That would be practical. They cleaned up together in companionable silence, and then Owen showed her to the larger bedroom. It was simple, with a large bed covered in a faded quilt, a dresser, and a washstand. A window looked out over the desert, and Penelope could see stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "I will leave you to rest," Owen said from the doorway. "We rise early here with the sun. But take your time tomorrow morning adjusting to the change." "Thank you," Penelope said, suddenly exhausted. "Good night, Mr. Russell." "Owen," he said, "you should call me Owen, and I will call you Penelope if you allow it." "I allow it," she said softly. He nodded and closed the door, leaving her alone. Penelope sank down onto the bed, feeling the full weight of the day settling over her. She had traveled across the country to marry a stranger, and in 3 days she would be his wife in truth. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. But as she changed into her nightgown and slipped between the clean sheets, Penelope found herself thinking of Owen's words from his letter, "Bore me forever." There was something deeply romantic about that, she thought, even if neither of them would ever admit it aloud. He wanted someone steady and reliable, someone who would be there day after day without drama or fuss. And she wanted someone who would not expect her to be anything other than what she was. Perhaps, she thought as sleep claimed her, that was its own kind of love story. The next morning, Penelope woke to the sound of roosters crowing and sunlight streaming through her window. For a moment, she was disoriented, unsure where she was. Then memory returned and she sat up, looking around the unfamiliar room. The clock on the dresser showed it was just past 6, earlier than she usually rose in Philadelphia. She dressed quickly in one of her plain work dresses and pinned up her hair with practiced efficiency. When she emerged from the bedroom, she found Owen already in the kitchen, attempting to make coffee. "Let me," she said, taking over before he could burn it. "You see to whatever needs doing outside, and I will have breakfast ready when you return." Owen looked relieved and headed out, leaving Penelope to explore the kitchen more thoroughly in daylight. The supplies were indeed limited, but she found eggs in the coop outside, along with fresh milk in the cool cellar. She made a proper breakfast of scrambled eggs, bacon, and fresh biscuits, along with strong coffee. When Owen returned, his eyes widened at the spread on the table. "You did not have to go to such trouble." "It was no trouble," Penelope said honestly. "I find comfort in routine tasks." "Then you are in the right place," Owen said with the faintest hint of a smile. "Ranch life is mostly routine tasks." They ate together, and Penelope learned more about the ranch. Owen had inherited it from his father 5 years ago and had built it into a modest but successful cattle operation. He employed 2 ranch hands who lived in the bunkhouse during the busy season but were currently helping with a cattle drive for a neighboring ranch. He raised mostly cattle but also kept horses, chickens, and a milk cow. "It is a lot of work for one person," Penelope observed. "It is," Owen agreed. "That is one reason I needed a wife, not the only reason," he added quickly, "but a practical one." "I appreciate practical reasons," Penelope said. "I would rather be useful than decorative." "You will be very useful here," Owen said. "But you are also more than just a pair of hands. I want you to know that." Penelope looked at him, surprised by the gentleness in his voice. "Thank you, Owen." They drove into Columbus later that morning, and Penelope made a list of supplies she would need for the household. Owen introduced her to the store owner, Mr. Henderson, a friendly man who seemed pleased that Owen had finally found himself a wife. "The whole town has been worried about you, Owen," Mr. Henderson said cheerfully. 3 years is too long for a man to be alone." "Well, I am alone no longer," Owen said, his hand settling briefly on Penelope's back. It was a small gesture, but it made her feel claimed in a way that was not entirely unpleasant. They also visited the preacher, Reverend Matthews, who agreed to come out to the ranch in 2 days to perform the ceremony. He was an older man with kind eyes who asked them a few questions about their intentions and seemed satisfied with their straightforward answers. "Marriage is a serious commitment," he said solemnly. "But I can see you both understand that. I will be happy to unite you." As they drove back to the ranch, Penelope felt the reality of her situation settling more firmly. In 2 days, she would be married. The thought should have terrified her, but instead she felt only a calm certainty. This was the right choice, even if it was unconventional. That evening, after another simple meal, Owen asked if she would like to see more of the ranch. They walked out into the cooling desert air, and he showed her the cattle, the horses, and explained his plans for expanding the operation. Penelope listened carefully, asking practical questions that seemed to please him. "You have a good head for business," he said. "My first wife, Sarah, she was kind and gentle, but she never understood the ranch. She hated it here, found it lonely and frightening. I should have known better than to bring her out here from Boston." "Where people come from shapes them," Penelope said carefully. "But it does not have to define them forever. I was shaped by the city, but I was never truly comfortable there either. Perhaps I was meant for this kind of life all along." Owen stopped walking and turned to face her. In the fading light, his face was half in shadow, but his eyes were serious. "I want you to be happy here, Penelope. Not just useful, not just content, but truly happy. If you find you cannot be, I want you to tell me." "That is a generous offer," Penelope said softly. "But I think happiness is something we build through our choices and actions, not something that simply happens to us. I choose to be here, Owen. That is enough." "You are a remarkable woman," he said quietly. "I did not expect that. I told you I was plain and boring." "You told me what you thought I needed to hear, but plain and boring do not begin to cover what you are." Penelope felt heat rise in her cheeks, unused to compliments. "You barely know me." "I know enough," Owen said. "I know you are brave enough to cross a continent to marry a stranger. I know you are honest even when lies would serve you better. I know you face uncertainty with calm practicality. Those are not boring qualities, Penelope." She did not know what to say to that, so she simply smiled and looked out at the darkening desert. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, and Penelope realized with some surprise that she felt more at peace than she had in months, perhaps years. The next 2 days passed quickly, filled with preparations and chores. Penelope threw herself into making the house more of a home, cleaning thoroughly and organizing the kitchen to her liking. Owen seemed content to let her make whatever changes she wished, and he was unfailingly courteous, never entering her room without knocking, never presuming on their upcoming marriage. On the morning of the wedding, Penelope woke with butterflies in her stomach. It was not a fancy affair, she knew. There would be no white dress, no flowers, no guests beyond the preacher and perhaps one or two townspeople serving as witnesses. But it was real and binding, and by the end of the day, she would be Owen Russell's wife. She dressed in her best dress, a simple gray cotton with a white collar, and did her hair as neatly as she could manage. Looking in the mirror, she saw exactly what she had always seen: a plain, unremarkable woman with brown hair and brown eyes and no distinguishing features. But perhaps, she thought, that was enough. Perhaps Owen saw something in her that she could not see in herself. Reverend Matthews arrived at noon, along with Mr. Henderson and his wife serving as witnesses. Owen wore a clean shirt and had clearly made an effort to tame his sun-bleached hair. He stood in the main room of the house, looking nervous for the first time since Penelope had met him. The ceremony was brief and simple. Reverend Matthews spoke about commitment and partnership, about facing life's challenges together. Owen and Penelope repeated their vows in steady voices, promising to honor and cherish each other for as long as they both lived. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Owen leaned down and kissed Penelope gently on the forehead, a chaste touch that nevertheless made her heart race. Mr. and Mrs. Henderson congratulated them both, and Mrs. Henderson whispered to Penelope, "You have got yourself a good man there. Owen Russell is one of the finest men in the territory." "I am beginning to realize that," Penelope whispered back. After the witnesses left, Owen and Penelope stood alone in their house, suddenly and officially married. The silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable exactly, but weighted with expectation. "I thought we might have a nice dinner," Owen finally said. "I bought a chicken in town and there is fresh bread. Nothing fancy, but better than our usual fare." "That sounds lovely," Penelope said, grateful for the practical suggestion. "Shall I cook it?" "Let me help you," Owen said. "We are partners now, after all." They worked together in the kitchen, and Penelope found herself relaxing into the rhythm of it. Owen was not skilled at cooking, but he followed directions well and did not complain about being assigned kitchen tasks. They talked easily as they worked, about small things and large ones, and Penelope realized she was actually enjoying herself. Over dinner, Owen poured them each a small glass of whiskey. "I know you said you did not expect romance," he said, "but I thought we should at least toast to our marriage." "To our marriage," Penelope echoed, raising her glass. The whiskey burned going down, but it was not unpleasant. "To boring each other forever," Owen added with a slight smile. Penelope laughed, surprised by the sound. She had not laughed much in recent months. "I will do my very best to be thoroughly uninteresting." "Too late," Owen said. "You have already failed at that." They cleaned up together, and then the moment Penelope had been both anticipating and dreading arrived. Owen walked with her to the larger bedroom, which was now their bedroom, and closed the door behind them. "Penelope," he said softly, "I know this is not a love match, but I want you to know I will never force myself on you. We can take our time with the physical aspects of marriage. There is no rush." His consideration touched her deeply. "You are very kind, Owen, but we are married now, and I understand what that means. I am not afraid." "You are trembling," he pointed out gently. "Nervousness, not fear," she clarified. "I have never been with a man before. I do not know what to expect." Owen reached out and took her hand, his thumb rubbing gentle circles on her palm. "Then we will learn together. I will not hurt you, Penelope. That I can promise." He was patient and gentle, more than she had any right to expect. He kissed her properly for the first time, his lips warm and firm against hers. Penelope had read about passion in books, but she had never expected to feel it herself. Yet as Owen's hands carefully unfastened her dress, as he whispered reassurances against her skin, she felt something unfurl inside her chest, something warm and surprisingly powerful. When it was over, Penelope lay curled against Owen's side, listening to his steady heartbeat. This, she thought, was not at all what she had expected. She had thought the physical side of marriage would be something to endure, a wifely duty to perform. But Owen had made it something else entirely, something that felt like connection and comfort and the beginning of something she could not quite name. "Are you all right?" Owen asked, his voice rumbling in his chest. "Yes," Penelope said, surprised to find it was true. "I am very much all right." He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Good. That is very good." They fell asleep like that, tangled together, and Penelope dreamed of wide open spaces and endless skies. The weeks that followed settled into a comfortable rhythm. Penelope rose early and made breakfast while Owen saw to the animals. They worked together on the endless tasks required to keep the ranch running. Mending fences, preserving food for winter, tending the vegetable garden Penelope started, and managing the livestock. In the evenings, they ate dinner together and talked about their days, about their plans for the ranch, about nothing and everything. Penelope discovered she enjoyed ranch life far more than she had ever enjoyed city living. There was something satisfying about physical work, about seeing the direct results of her labor. The house became truly hers as she made small improvements and additions. She sewed new curtains, planted flowers near the porch, and organized the storage shed. Owen praised every change, clearly pleased to have someone taking an interest in making their house a home. At night, they came together in the marriage bed, and Penelope discovered that what had started as duty was becoming something she actively desired. Owen was an attentive husband, always making sure she was satisfied, always treating her with respect and care. And slowly, almost without her noticing, Penelope realized she was falling in love with her practical, steady husband. It happened in small moments. The way Owen always made sure she had the last biscuit at breakfast. The way he listened when she talked, really listened, as though her thoughts mattered. The way he thanked her for cooking dinner every single night as though it were a gift and not simply her duty. The way he looked at her sometimes, with something soft and warm in his blue eyes. One evening, about 2 months after their wedding, they were sitting on the porch watching the sunset. Owen had his arm around her shoulders, and Penelope was leaning against his side, comfortable and content. "I got a letter from my brother in Colorado," Owen said. "He wants to visit this winter, bring his family. I thought you should know in case you want to prepare for guests." "I would like to meet your family," Penelope said. "You have told me so much about them." "They will love you," Owen said with certainty. "How could they not?" Penelope turned to look at him. "Owen, I need to tell you something." He looked concerned. "What is it? Are you unhappy?" "No," she said quickly. "The opposite, actually. I need to tell you that I am very happy. Happier than I ever expected to be. And I need to tell you that I think I am falling in love with you. I know that was not part of our agreement, and I do not expect you to feel the same, but I needed you to know." Owen stared at her for a long moment, and then a slow smile spread across his face. "Penelope Crawford Russell, you are the most unexpected woman I have ever known. I told you in my letter to bore me forever, and instead, you have turned my entire world upside down." "I am sorry," Penelope started to say, but Owen cut her off with a kiss. "I am falling in love with you too," he said when they broke apart. I think I have been since you stepped off that train looking so determined and nervous. You were exactly what you said you would be. Plain, practical, and completely honest. And I found all of that beautiful. I am not beautiful, Penelope protested. You are to me, Owen said firmly. Beauty is not just a pretty face, Penelope. It is strength and courage and kindness. It is getting up every morning and facing the day with determination. It is creating a home in a harsh land. It is choosing to be here with me even when you could have chosen otherwise. That is beautiful. Penelope felt tears prick her eyes. You are going to make me cry. Then cry, Owen said softly. I will hold you while you do. So she did, not sad tears but happy ones, tears of relief and joy and overwhelming gratitude. And Owen held her close, just as he had promised, solid and steady and real. That night, their lovemaking had a new intensity, a new tenderness. They were no longer two people fulfilling a contract, but two people expressing love through touch and whisper. Afterward, as they lay together in the darkness, Owen traced patterns on Penelope's bare shoulder. I never thought I would feel this way again, he admitted. After Sarah died, I thought that part of my life was over. I thought I would marry for practical reasons and that would be enough. But you have given me so much more than I ever expected. We have given each other that, Penelope said. I came here expecting nothing more than survival, and I found a home and a partner and love. Real love, not the fairy tale kind, but the kind that is built on respect and honesty and waking up each day choosing each other. Bore me forever, Owen said with a smile in his voice. That was what I wrote to you. What a fool I was. You have never bored me for a single moment, Penelope. Perhaps boring is another word for steady, Penelope suggested, for reliable and constant, and perhaps that is what we both needed, not excitement but steadiness. You are wise as well as beautiful, Owen said, kissing her temple. How did I get so lucky? We both got lucky, Penelope corrected. Against all odds we found each other. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and Penelope felt more at peace than she had ever felt in her entire life. As autumn gave way to winter, the ranch work changed but never ceased. Owen's brother, Oliver, arrived with his wife and 3 children in late November, and Penelope threw herself into preparing for their visit. She cleaned the house top to bottom, prepared as much food as she could in advance, and made up pallets for the children in the main room. Meeting Owen's family was nerve-wracking, but Oliver and his wife, Margaret, were warm and welcoming. The children, ranging in age from 5 to 10, were energetic and curious, fascinated by their uncle's ranch and their new aunt. Owen wrote that he was getting married, Oliver said on their first night there after the children were asleep. But he did not tell us he had fallen head over heels in love. Is it that obvious? Owen asked, his hand finding Penelope's under the table. Completely, Margaret said with a smile. You can barely take your eyes off her and she looks at you the same way. It is lovely to see, Owen. After everything you went through with Sarah, you deserve happiness. I have found it, Owen said simply, squeezing Penelope's hand. More than I ever thought possible. The visit was a success, and Penelope found she enjoyed having family around. The children's laughter filled the house, and Margaret was easy company, sharing recipes and household tips. Oliver and Owen spent their days working on ranch projects together, catching up on lost time. When they left after a week, the house felt too quiet, and Penelope realized she was ready for something she had never expected to want. Owen, she said that evening as they prepared for bed, how would you feel about having children? Owen looked up from removing his boots, surprise and joy warring on his face. I would love that. Are you saying you want to try? I think I am, Penelope said. I never thought I would be a mother. I always assumed I would be alone, but now, with you, I find I want to build a family. Is it too soon to think about such things? Not at all, Owen said, crossing to her and pulling her into his arms. I would love nothing more than to have children with you, but only if you are ready, only if you truly want it. I truly want it, Penelope assured him. I want to fill this house with love and laughter. I want to give children the stable home I never quite had. I want to build something lasting with you. Owen kissed her deeply. Then let us start building. Spring came to the New Mexico territory with a burst of wildflowers and warm winds. Penelope's garden flourished under her careful attention, and the ranch prospered. Owen hired back his 2 ranch hands for the busy season, and Penelope found herself cooking for 4 instead of 2. She did not mind. The work kept her busy, and the men were respectful and appreciative of her efforts. By May, Penelope suspected she might be pregnant. She waited another month to be sure before telling Owen, wanting to be certain before raising his hopes. When she finally told him one evening in June, he picked her up and spun her around, his face alight with pure joy. "Are you certain?" he asked, setting her down carefully as though she might break. "As certain as I can be," Penelope said, laughing at his sudden caution. "I am not made of glass, Owen. I can still work and live normally." I know, he said, but his hand settled protectively over her still flat stomach. "I just cannot believe it. We are going to have a baby, Penelope." "We are," she confirmed, covering his hand with hers. "In late January or early February, I think." That night, Owen was impossibly tender with her, treating her as though she were precious beyond measure. And perhaps Penelope thought she was. Not because she was special or remarkable, but because she was his and carrying his child, and that made her valuable in a way she had never experienced before. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the summer and into the fall. Penelope continued to work, though Owen and the ranch hands insisted on doing the heavier tasks. She found she enjoyed being pregnant, feeling the baby move and grow inside her. Owen talked to her belly at night, telling their unborn child about the ranch and the desert and how much they were already loved. In October, they made a trip into Columbus to see the doctor, who confirmed that Penelope and the baby were both healthy. He gave her instructions for the coming months and assured Owen that most births went smoothly, though Penelope saw the shadow cross her husband's face and knew he was thinking of Sarah. "I am not Sarah," she told him gently on the drive home. "I am strong and healthy, and I will be fine." "We both will. I cannot lose you," Owen said quietly. "I know I survived it once, but I cannot do it again. You have become my whole world, Penelope." "Then have faith," she said. "Have faith in me and in our child. We are going to be fine." Winter came early that year, with snow dusting the mountains by November. Penelope nested, preparing the house for the baby's arrival. She sewed tiny clothes and blankets, set up a cradle that Owen had built in the corner of their bedroom, and stocked up on supplies. Owen brought in a midwife from town, a capable woman named Mrs. Flynn, who agreed to come and stay when Penelope's time drew near. Christmas came and went, a quiet celebration with just the 2 of them. They exchanged simple gifts. Penelope had made Owen a new shirt, and he had bought her a beautiful silver locket with space for 2 pictures inside. "For our family," he said, fastening it around her neck. "You and our child." "Our family," Penelope repeated, liking the sound of it. The baby came on a cold February night, 2 weeks earlier than expected. Penelope woke to contractions and calmly woke Owen, who immediately panicked and had to be talked down from riding to town in the dark. "It will be hours yet," Penelope told him. "First babies are always slow. We have time." Owen rode to town at first light to fetch Mrs. Flynn, and by the time they returned, Penelope's contractions were coming closer together. The midwife took charge immediately, examining Penelope and declaring that everything was progressing normally. The labor was long and difficult, as first births often are. Penelope bore the pain with the same steady determination she brought to everything in her life, refusing to cry out even when the contractions became intense. Owen stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand, wiping her brow, whispering encouragement. "You are the strongest person I know," he told her. "You can do this." And she could. As the sun was setting, Penelope gave a final push and their baby entered the world with a loud, healthy cry. Mrs. Flynn cleaned and wrapped the infant, then placed the baby in Penelope's arms. "You have a son," she announced. "A big, healthy boy." Penelope looked down at her baby, at his red face and dark hair, and felt her heart expand in a way she had not known was possible. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "We have been waiting for you." Owen leaned over them both, his eyes suspiciously bright. "He is perfect. You are perfect. Thank you, Penelope. Thank you for this." "He needs a name," Penelope said, unable to take her eyes off her son. "I thought perhaps James, after your father," Owen suggested. Penelope looked up at him in surprise. She had mentioned her father only once in passing, but Owen had remembered. "James Russell," she said. "Yes, that is perfect." Mrs. Flynn stayed for 3 days, making sure both Penelope and baby James were doing well. Penelope recovered quickly, and James was a good baby, eating well and sleeping in reasonable stretches. Owen was besotted with his son, holding him whenever he could and staring at him with wonder. "I cannot believe he is ours," Owen said one night, watching Penelope nurse their son. "I cannot believe we made something so perfect." "We did, though," Penelope said. "We built this together, Owen, our family." As the weeks passed, they settled into life with a newborn. It was exhausting and demanding, but Penelope had never been happier. She loved watching Owen with their son, seeing the gentle way he handled the baby, the soft voice he used when talking to him. She loved the feeling of completeness, of having a real family of her own. Spring came again, bringing new life to the ranch. James grew from a tiny newborn into a chubby, happy baby who smiled and cooed and brought joy to everyone who met him. The ranch hands doted on him, taking turns holding him when Penelope brought him out to the porch. One evening in May, when James was 3 months old and sleeping peacefully in his cradle, Owen and Penelope sat on the porch watching the sunset. It had become their ritual, this quiet time together at the end of the day. "You remember your letter?" Owen asked suddenly. "When you told me you were plain and boring," "I remember," Penelope said. "I meant every word." "And I told you to bore me forever," Owen continued. "Do you remember that? How could I forget? It was the most romantic thing anyone had ever said to me." Owen laughed. "Only you would find that romantic." "It was," Penelope insisted. "You saw me clearly, even from a distance. You understood what I needed to hear, what I needed to know. That steadiness and constancy were valuable, that I did not have to be something I was not." "You exceeded every expectation I had," Owen said. "You came here prepared to be practical and useful, and instead you transformed my entire life. You made this house a home. You gave me a family. You taught me that love can grow in the most unexpected places, between two people who thought they were settling for less but actually found everything." "I love you," Penelope said simply. "I love you more than I knew it was possible to love someone. You have given me everything I never knew I needed." "And you have given me the same," Owen said. "You, Penelope Russell, are the least boring person I have ever known. Every day with you is an adventure, even when we are doing nothing more than ranch work and caring for our son." "That is because the adventure is not in the doing," Penelope said. "It is in the being together, in facing everything side by side, in choosing each other every single day. "Bore me forever," Owen repeated, pulling her close. "That is still what I want. Forever with you, doing the everyday things, building our life together. That is everything." Inside the house, James began to fuss and Penelope rose to tend to him. But before she went inside, she turned back to Owen and smiled. "Forever," she promised. "That is what you will get." The years that followed were good ones, filled with hard work and simple joys. The ranch continued to prosper under Owen's careful management and Penelope's practical support. James grew from a baby into a toddler, then a young boy, curious and energetic and deeply loved. When James was 2, Penelope discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy felt easier, perhaps because she knew what to expect. Their daughter, Emma, was born on a warm September evening, as different from her brother as could be. Where James had been big and robust, Emma was tiny and delicate, with her father's blue eyes and her mother's serious expression. "2 children," Owen said, holding his daughter with the same wonder he had shown with James. "We have 2 children, Penelope. Can you believe it?" "I can," Penelope said, tired but happy. "I can believe it because we made it real through choice and work and love. Nothing about our life is accidental, Owen. Everything we have, we built together." Life with 2 children was chaotic and demanding, but Penelope thrived on it. She had discovered that motherhood suited her, that the practical skills she had always possessed translated perfectly to caring for children. She was patient and steady, exactly what young children needed. And Owen was a wonderful father, involved and affectionate, teaching James about the ranch and singing to Emma when she fussed. They had help, of course. The ranch hands continued to work for them seasonally, and Mrs. Flynn from town came regularly to check on the children. Owen's brother Oliver and his family visited when they could, and slowly, Penelope built a network of friends among the other ranch wives in the area. But her favorite times were still the quiet evenings on the porch with Owen, watching the sunset over the desert they both loved. The children would be asleep inside, the day's work would be done, and they would sit together in companionable silence, his arm around her shoulders, her head on his chest. "I have been thinking," Owen said one such evening when Emma was 6 months old, "about expanding the ranch, maybe buying the Thornton property to the west." "What do you think?" "I think you should do it," Penelope said. "We have the resources and it would secure our future, James and Emma's future." "Always practical," Owen said fondly. "That is one of the many things I love about you." "I thought you wanted boring," Penelope teased. "I wanted you," Owen corrected. "Boring was just the word you used to describe yourself. I knew better even then." "Did you?" Penelope asked curiously. "When you read my letter, did you really know?" "I knew you were honest," Owen said. "And I knew that anyone brave enough to write such a letter was worth taking a chance on. The rest I discovered as I went along, and every discovery has been better than the last." "Even when I burned dinner?" Penelope asked. "Even then?" "Although that has only happened twice in 4 years, so I think we are safe." They laughed together, the sound carrying on the evening breeze. Inside, Emma began to cry, and Penelope rose to tend to her. But she paused at the door and looked back at Owen, at the man who had taken a chance on a plain, boring woman from Philadelphia and given her the world. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what? For seeing me. For wanting me. For building this life with me. For boring me forever." Owen stood and crossed to her, taking her face in his hands. "Thank you for the same. You saved me, Penelope. After Sarah died, I was just existing, going through the motions. You taught me to live again. You taught me that second chances are real, that love can be built on honesty and respect and choosing each other every day." He kissed her then, a sweet, lingering kiss that still had the power to make her heart race after 4 years of marriage. When they broke apart, Emma's cries had intensified and they both laughed. "Our daughter has timing," Owen observed. "She gets that from you," Penelope said, heading inside. The years continued to pass, marked by the changing seasons and the growth of their children. James grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved the ranch and followed his father everywhere. Emma was more reserved, bookish and quiet, preferring to help her mother in the garden or kitchen than work with the animals. When James was 6 and Emma was 4, Penelope discovered she was pregnant once more. This pregnancy was more difficult than the previous 2, leaving her tired and sick for the first few months. Owen worried constantly, but Penelope assured him she was fine, just older now and finding pregnancy harder. Their second son, Samuel, was born in the spring, a healthy baby with a full head of dark hair and his mother's brown eyes. James was fascinated by his new brother, and Emma was indifferent, more interested in her picture books than the squalling infant. 3 children, Owen said, holding Samuel while Penelope rested. "We have 3 children now. Our family is complete." "Is it?" Penelope asked, curious about his certainty. "I think so," Owen said. "Unless you want more," Penelope considered. She was 31 now, not young but not old, but 3 children felt right, felt complete. "No," she said. "I think 3 is perfect. 2 boys and a girl. We are blessed, Owen." "We are," he agreed. "More blessed than I ever imagined possible." Life continued in its steady rhythm. The ranch prospered, expanding as they had planned. Owen bought the Thornton property and hired more permanent ranch hands to help manage the larger operation. Penelope oversaw the household and the children, finding satisfaction in the daily routines and challenges of family life. James grew into a capable assistant to his father, already showing a natural talent for ranching. Emma developed a love of reading and writing, and Penelope taught her from the few books they owned, supplementing with lessons from the school teacher who came through Columbus occasionally. Samuel was still too young to show his preferences, but he was a happy, easy baby who seemed content to be passed from person to person. One evening, when Penelope was 33 and had been married to Owen for 8 years, they sat on their customary spot on the porch. The children were all in bed, the ranch was quiet, and the stars were bright in the clear desert sky. "You ever regret it?" Owen asked suddenly. "Coming here, marrying me, giving up whatever life you might have had in Philadelphia?" Penelope turned to look at him in surprise. "Never, not once." "Not for a single moment. Why would you ask that?" "I was just thinking about how brave you were," Owen said, "leaving everything you knew to marry a stranger. Sometimes I worry that you feel trapped here, that you miss the city." "Owen Russell," Penelope said firmly. "I was trapped in Philadelphia. Here I am free. Free to be myself, free to build the life I want, free to love you and our children without reservation. This ranch, this life, this family, this is everything I never knew to dream of." "You are certain?" "I am certain." "Are you having doubts?" "God, no," Owen said quickly. "I just wanted to make sure you were happy. Your happiness is important to me, Penelope. It always has been." "Then rest easy," Penelope said, taking his hand. "I am happy, deeply, truly happy. You gave me that, Owen, you and our life together." He pulled her close and they sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars. After a while, Owen spoke again. "I love you, Penelope. I know I say it often, but I want you to know I mean it every time. You are my partner, my best friend, the love of my life. Everything I am, everything we have built, it is all because of you. Not because of me," Penelope corrected. "With me. We built this together, Owen. That is what makes it strong. Neither of us did it alone." "With you, then," Owen agreed. "Everything with you." As the children grew older, the dynamics of the family shifted. James, at 10, was already a skilled horseman and eager to take on more responsibility. Emma, at 8, had become the family reader, devouring any book they could get their hands on and retelling the stories to her younger brother. Samuel, at 4, was the family clown, always laughing and finding joy in everything. Penelope watched her children with pride and wonder, amazed that she had helped create these remarkable little people. They were not perfect, of course. James could be stubborn. Emma was sometimes too withdrawn, and Samuel had a tendency to get into mischief. But they were good children, kind and loving, and they were growing up in a stable home filled with love. Owen was an excellent father, patient and firm in equal measure. He taught the children about the ranch, about the land, about the importance of hard work and honesty. But he also taught them about love, demonstrating through his actions with Penelope what a good marriage looked like. The children never doubted that their parents loved each other, and that security gave them a foundation to build their own lives upon. One afternoon in late summer, when Penelope was 35, she was working in her garden when Mrs. Flynn came by for a visit. The older woman had become a good friend over the years, and Penelope valued her wisdom and company. "You have built a beautiful life here," Mrs. Flynn observed, accepting a glass of cool water and settling into one of the porch chairs. "I remember when Owen first wrote to you, how worried I was that a city woman would not adapt to ranch life. You proved me wrong." "I surprised myself," Penelope admitted. "I had no idea I would take to this life so well, but it suits me in a way Philadelphia never did." "That is because you found where you belong," Mrs. Flynn said, "and who you belong with. Owen is a different man than he was before you came, happier, more settled. You are good for each other." "We are," Penelope agreed. "I never expected to find love, you know. When I answered his advertisement, I was just trying to survive. Finding love was an unexpected blessing." "The best things usually are," Mrs. Flynn said wisely. "Unexpected blessings that sneak up on you when you are not looking." That evening, Penelope told Owen about the conversation. They were in their bedroom preparing for sleep, and Owen was brushing out Penelope's hair, something he had taken to doing as a nightly ritual. "She is right," Owen said. "You are an unexpected blessing. When I wrote that advertisement, I was looking for help with the ranch. I never imagined I would find my soulmate." "Soulmate," Penelope repeated, testing the word. "Is that what we are?" "What else would you call it?" Owen asked. "We fit together perfectly. We think alike, we want the same things, we complement each other's strengths and weaknesses." "If that is not soulmates, I do not know what is." "I thought soulmates were supposed to be passionate and dramatic," Penelope said. "We are neither of those things." "We are passionate in our own way," Owen said. "Maybe not the way romance novels describe it, but what we have is real and lasting. I would rather have our kind of love than all the drama in the world." "So would I," Penelope agreed. "Our boring, steady love." "Not boring," Owen corrected, setting down the brush and turning her to face him. "Never boring. Steady, yes. Reliable, yes. But boring? Never." He kissed her to prove his point, and Penelope laughed against his lips. After 15 years of marriage, he could still make her feel like a blushing bride. The seasons continued to turn, bringing the family through summers and winters, droughts and abundant years. The ranch grew and prospered, and Owen and Penelope grew with it. Their hair began to show threads of gray, their faces gained more lines, but their love only deepened with time. James grew into a young man, strong and capable, taking on more and more of the ranch management. At 18, he was nearly as skilled as his father and had clear ideas about the future of the ranch. Emma, at 16, had become a teacher of sorts, helping the younger children in the area with their lessons. And Samuel, at 12, was still trying to figure out where he fit, interested in everything and committed to nothing. Owen and Penelope watched their children grow with pride and a touch of melancholy. Soon, their babies would be fully grown, making their own lives. But that was as it should be, they agreed. They had raised their children to be independent and capable, to make good choices and find their own paths. One evening, on their 15th wedding anniversary, Owen surprised Penelope with a gift. It was a leather-bound journal, empty and waiting to be filled. "I thought you might like to write down our story," he explained, "for the children and their children after them, so they know how we started, what we built, what we believed in." Penelope was touched by the thoughtfulness of the gift. "That is a wonderful idea, though I am not much of a writer." "You are the most honest person I know," Owen said. "Just write honestly the way you do everything else. That will be enough." So Penelope began to write, chronicling their story from that first exchange of letters through their years together. She wrote about the challenges and the joys, the ordinary days and the extraordinary moments. She wrote about learning to love, about building a family, about finding home in an unexpected place. As she wrote, Penelope reflected on the incredible journey her life had taken. From a desperate woman in Philadelphia, answering an advertisement for a mail-order bride, to a beloved wife and mother with a full and meaningful life. It had not always been easy, but it had always been worth it. "What are you thinking about?" Owen asked one evening, finding her at the kitchen table with her journal open before her. "About how much we have built together," Penelope said. "About how different my life would be if I had never answered your advertisement. About how grateful I am that I did." Owen sat beside her and took her hand. "I am grateful too. Every single day I am grateful for you, for your steadiness, your honesty, your strength, for being exactly who you said you were and so much more." "You told me to bore you forever," Penelope reminded him with a smile. "Have I succeeded?" "Not even close," Owen said, "but I would not have it any other way." They sat together in comfortable silence, their hands intertwined, their lives so deeply woven together that it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. This, Penelope thought, was what happiness looked like. Not grand gestures or passionate declarations, but quiet moments of connection, of understanding, of simply being together. The years continued to pass, bringing new challenges and new joys. James married a local rancher's daughter when he was 21, bringing a new daughter into the family. Emma met a traveling journalist who was writing about the territories and fell in love with his adventurous spirit. They married when she was 19 and moved to Denver, though they visited often. Samuel eventually discovered a passion for horses, breeding and training them with natural skill. Owen and Penelope became grandparents, delighting in their grandchildren while appreciating that they could hand them back to their parents at the end of the day. The ranch continued to prosper under James's management, and Owen gradually stepped back, content to advise rather than direct. At 50 years old, Penelope looked back on her life with deep satisfaction. She had taken a chance on a stranger and found everything she never knew to dream of. She had built a family, a home, a legacy, and she had done it all with Owen by her side, her steady, reliable, beloved partner. One evening, sitting on their porch and watching yet another sunset, Owen turned to her with the same serious expression he had worn on the day they first met. "Penelope Russell," he said, "I have a question for you." "What is it?" Penelope asked, curious about his formal tone. "If you could go back and change anything about our life together, would you?" Penelope did not even have to think about her answer. "No, not a single thing. Every challenge made us stronger, every joy more precious. I would not change any of it." "Good," Owen said, "because neither would I." "You are still boring me, you know. Every single day in the very best way." Penelope laughed, the sound carrying on the evening breeze. "And you are still the most romantic man I know in your own peculiar way." "Is that a compliment?" "The highest," Penelope assured him. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. After 28 years of marriage, they no longer needed words to communicate. A glance, a touch, a shared smile, these were enough. "I love you," Owen said softly. "I will never stop loving you, Penelope, not in this life or any other." "And I love you," Penelope replied. "Always and forever, just as we promised." As darkness fell and the stars began to appear, they remained on the porch, watching the night sky together. Their children were grown and building their own lives. Their grandchildren were thriving. The ranch was secure and prosperous. Everything they had worked for had come to fruition. But more than any of that, they had each other. Two people who had started as strangers, brought together by necessity and desperation, had built something beautiful and lasting. They had proven that love could grow from the smallest seeds, that honesty and respect could form a foundation stronger than passion, that choosing each other every day was the most romantic thing of all. "Come inside," Penelope said eventually. "It is getting cold." Owen stood and helped her to her feet, his hand warm and steady in hers. Together, they walked into their home, the home they had made together, filled with memories and love and the accumulated treasures of a life well lived. Years continued to unfold, bringing Owen and Penelope into their later years with grace and dignity. Their hair turned fully gray, their steps became slower, but their love remained as strong as ever. They watched with pride as their children raised families of their own, as their grandchildren grew and began to show signs of the people they would become. James took over the ranch completely, and Owen was content to sit on the porch and offer advice when asked. Emma's writing about her mother's journey from mail-order bride to beloved matriarch was published in a Denver newspaper, bringing attention to Penelope's quiet strength and inspiring other women facing difficult choices. Samuel's horse breeding program became well known throughout the territory, and he supplied horses to ranches across New Mexico. On their 35th wedding anniversary, the entire family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. Children and grandchildren filled the house, and the sound of laughter and conversation was everywhere. Penelope, now 58 years old, looked around at the crowd and felt her heart swell with gratitude. "Look what we made," Owen said softly, coming to stand beside her. "Look at all these people who exist because we took a chance on each other." "It is remarkable," Penelope agreed. "When I wrote that letter so many years ago, I never imagined this. I thought I was settling for survival, but instead I found abundance." "We found it together," Owen reminded her. "As we have found everything together." That evening, after everyone had gone to bed or headed home, Owen and Penelope sat on their porch one more time. At 62, Owen moved more carefully than he once had, and Penelope knew his joints ached from decades of ranch work. But his eyes were still the same blue that had captivated her all those years ago, and his smile still made her heart flutter. "You remember what I wrote in my letter?" Owen asked. "Bore me forever." "I remember," Penelope said. "It was the best proposal anyone ever made to me." "I meant it then and I mean it now," Owen said. "You have bored me in the most wonderful way possible. Steady, constant, reliable, always there. That is the greatest gift anyone has ever given me." "And you gave me the same," Penelope said. "A place to belong, a purpose, a family, and love." "So much love, Owen, more than I ever thought I deserved." "You deserve everything," Owen said firmly. "Everything good and beautiful in the world. I only wish I could have given you more." "You gave me everything that matters," Penelope said. "You saw me truly, accepted me completely and loved me faithfully. What more could anyone ask for? They sat in their usual companionable silence, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. The desert night was cool and clear, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. "Thank you," Owen said suddenly, "for answering my advertisement, for being brave enough to come here, for building this life with me, for loving me even when I was not sure I deserved to be loved again. For everything, Penelope, thank you for everything." "Thank you for seeing past plain and boring," Penelope replied. "Thank you for valuing honesty and steadiness. Thank you for being my partner, my love, my home. Thank you for 35 years of boring me in the very best way." Owen reached over and took her hand, their fingers intertwining automatically after decades of practice. They sat like that, hand in hand as they had sat countless times before, and Penelope thought about how a single letter, written in desperation and delivered in hope, had changed everything. As the years continued to pass, Owen and Penelope aged together, their bodies wearing down but their spirits remaining strong. They faced health challenges and losses, as all elderly people do, but they faced them together, supporting each other through every difficulty. When Owen was 68, he suffered a fall from a horse that left him with a badly broken leg. Penelope nursed him back to health with the same steady patience she had brought to everything in their life together. And when Penelope developed a persistent cough the following winter, Owen sat by her bedside through long nights, holding her hand and refusing to leave her side until she recovered. "We are getting old," Owen observed one evening, watching Penelope knit by the fire. They were both moving slower now, but they were still together, still in their home, still surrounded by family. "We are," Penelope agreed, "but we are getting old together, and that makes all the difference." "Would you do it again?" Owen asked. "If you could go back to that moment when you were deciding whether to answer my advertisement, would you still do it?" "In a heartbeat," Penelope said without hesitation. "Every time, Owen. I would choose you every time. Even knowing how hard it would be, the isolation, the work, the challenges." "Especially knowing that," Penelope said, "because I also know the rewards, our children, our grandchildren, our life together. All of it was worth every difficulty." Owen smiled, and despite his age and the lines time had carved into his face, Penelope still saw the man she had first met on that train platform so many years ago. Serious, steady, reliable, and hers. They celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary surrounded by family, with children and grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren now. The house was full to bursting, and the celebration lasted all day. As the sun set and people began to leave or settle in for the night, Owen pulled Penelope aside. "Walk with me," he asked. They walked slowly out to the porch, to the spot where they had spent so many evenings together. The ranch stretched out before them, bathed in the golden light of sunset, and Penelope felt a deep sense of peace settle over her. 40 years, Owen said. 40 years of boring each other." "Have I bored you sufficiently?" Penelope asked with a smile. "Not nearly enough," Owen said. "I want 40 more years. I want forever with you, Penelope." "We have had forever," Penelope said softly. "Every day we have been together has been forever because it has been everything. You gave me forever the moment you wrote those words in your letter. Bore me forever. And I have been boring you ever since." "Never boring," Owen said, pulling her close. "Steady, constant, reliable, yes, but never boring. You are the most interesting person I have ever known, Penelope Russell." She laughed softly. "After 40 years, you still insist on that." "After 40 years, I know it to be true." They stood together, watching the sun set over the land they had worked and loved for 4 decades. Behind them, Through the windows of their home, they could hear the sounds of their family, the legacy they had built together through determination and love and the simple act of choosing each other every single day. "I love you," Penelope said. "Thank you for boring me forever." "And I love you," Owen replied. "Thank you for being exactly what you said you were, and so much more than I ever dreamed of." As darkness fell and the first stars appeared, they remained on the porch, holding each other, content in the knowledge that they had built something true and lasting. Two strangers who had met through necessity and desperation had created a love story for the ages, not through grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but through the steady accumulation of ordinary days lived with extraordinary devotion. And as they finally went inside, hand in hand, to join their family and celebrate another evening together, Penelope thought about that young woman who had written an honest letter to a stranger so many years ago. That woman had been brave without knowing it, strong without realizing it, and worthy of love despite her certainty that she was neither. "Thank you," Penelope thought to that younger self. "Thank you for being brave enough to answer that advertisement. Thank you for being honest enough to tell the truth. Thank you for giving me this life, this love, this family. Thank you for everything." The years flowed on like a steady river, carrying Owen and Penelope deeper into their twilight years. At 70, Owen finally admitted that he could no longer help with the heavy ranch work, though he still rose early each morning to watch the sunrise and offer advice to James when asked. Penelope, at 66, still maintained her garden and cooked for the family gatherings that happened with increasing frequency, as everyone wanted to spend time with the aging matriarch and patriarch. Their grandchildren, now adults themselves, brought their own children to visit, creating a fourth generation of the family that Owen and Penelope had founded. The original adobe house had been expanded several times over the years, but it still retained its character, still felt like home. The porch where Owen and Penelope had spent so many evenings remained their favorite spot, weathered but sturdy, like the couple themselves. One spring morning, when the desert was blooming with unexpected wildflowers after a wet winter, Penelope woke to find Owen already up and dressed. This was unusual, as he normally waited for her to help him with the buttons on his shirt, his fingers having grown stiff with arthritis. "Where are you going so early?" she asked, pulling on her robe. "I wanted to show you something," Owen said mysteriously. "Can you come with me?" Curious, Penelope dressed quickly and followed him outside. Owen led her away from the house, walking slowly but with obvious purpose. They made their way to a small rise that overlooked the ranch, a spot they had not visited in years due to the difficult climb. When they reached the top, Owen turned to her with a smile. "Do you remember when we first stood here together? It was the day after we were married, and I wanted to show you everything that would be ours." Penelope remembered. She had been nervous and uncertain, a new bride in a strange land. But Owen had been patient and kind, pointing out the boundaries of their property and sharing his dreams for the future. "I remember," she said softly. "You told me about your plans to expand, to build something lasting." "We did it," Owen said, gesturing at the ranch spread out before them. "Look at what we built, Penelope. Not just the ranch, but the family, the legacy. We started with nothing but a letter and a hope, and we created all of this." "We did," Penelope agreed, her eyes taking in the familiar landscape. The house where their children had grown up, the barn where James now taught his own son about ranching, the garden where Emma's daughter liked to play, the pastures where Samuel's prized horses grazed. It was all there, solid and real, proof of their life together. "I wanted to tell you something," Owen said, turning to face her. "I wanted to tell you that every moment of these 43 years has been worth it. Every struggle, every challenge, every ordinary day, all of it was worth it because I got to spend it with you. Owen, Penelope said, touched by the emotion in his voice. What has brought this on? I am 70 years old, Owen said simply. I do not know how many more sunrises I will see, but I wanted to make sure you knew, absolutely knew how much you have meant to me, how much you still mean to me. Penelope took his weathered hands in hers. I know, Owen, just as you know how much you mean to me. We have been showing each other every day for 43 years. Bore me forever, Owen said with a smile. That is what I asked for, and you have given me that in the most beautiful way possible. And you have bored me right back, Penelope said, tears forming in her eyes, in the very best way. You have been my constant, my steady presence, my home. I cannot imagine my life without you, Owen Russell. And I cannot imagine mine without you, Penelope Russell. They stood together on that rise, two elderly people who had loved each other well and built a life worth living. The sun rose higher, painting the desert in shades of gold and orange, and somewhere below, they could hear the sounds of the ranch coming to life. As the seasons changed, Owen's health began to decline. He grew weaker, spending more time resting than working, though his mind remained sharp. Penelope stayed by his side, reading to him, reminiscing about their years together and simply being present. The family visited constantly, wanting to spend time with the man who had been the rock upon which their whole family was built. On a quiet evening in late fall, with the first chill of winter in the air, Owen and Penelope sat together in their bedroom. He was propped up in bed, too weak now to make it to the porch, and she sat beside him, holding his hand. Penelope, he said softly, I need to tell you something. What is it? She asked, though she knew. She could see it in his eyes, in the peaceful acceptance on his face. I am ready, he said. I am ready to rest, but I need to know you will be all right. I will be all right, Penelope said, though her heart was breaking. I will be all right because of everything you gave me, because of our family, our love, our life together. You have given me so much strength, Owen. I will carry that with me. You were always the strong one, Owen said with a faint smile. I just gave you a place to show that strength. We gave each other that, Penelope said. We gave each other everything. Owen closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them to look at her. You are the love of my life, Penelope Crawford Russell, the very best thing that ever happened to me. Thank you for boring me so perfectly for so long. And thank you for asking me to, Penelope whispered. Thank you for seeing me, for wanting me, for loving me. Thank you for 43 years of forever. Owen squeezed her hand weakly. Tell them, tell our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, tell them that love does not have to be dramatic to be real. Tell them that the best love is steady and constant, built day by day through small choices and quiet devotion. Tell them we were happy, Penelope. Tell them we were so very happy. I will tell them, Penelope promised. I will make sure they know. Owen smiled, and then he closed his eyes and took his last breath, peaceful and ready, with Penelope holding his hand just as she had held it through 4 decades of life together. The grief was overwhelming, but Penelope bore it with the same steady strength she had brought to everything else. She planned a beautiful funeral, attended by what seemed like half the territory. Person after person spoke about Owen's kindness, his integrity, his devotion to his family. And Penelope stood there, dry-eyed but deeply sorrowful, knowing that she had lost her partner, her love, her home. But she also knew that what they had built together would last far beyond his death. Their children would carry on his legacy. Their grandchildren would tell stories about him to their own children. And the ranch they had built together would stand as a testament to their partnership. In the weeks after Owen's death, Penelope found comfort in completing the journal she had been writing. She wrote about their final months together, about the peace with which Owen had faced death, about the completeness of their love story. And then she wrote a final entry, addressed to their descendants. "We were not a dramatic love story, your great-grandfather and I. We did not meet under romantic circumstances or fall in love at first sight. We were two practical people who came together out of necessity and built something beautiful through determination and daily choice. He asked me to bore him forever, and I did, and it was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything. Remember this. Love does not have to be grand to be genuine. The smallest acts of devotion, repeated day after day for a lifetime, create something stronger than any dramatic passion. Choose each other every day. Be honest with each other always, and find joy in the ordinary, because that is where real life happens. We were happy, your great-grandfather and I. We were so very, very happy. And that is the greatest gift we can leave you. The knowledge that happiness is possible, that love is real, and that forever can be built one day at a time." Penelope lived for another 6 years after Owen's death, remaining on the ranch and watching her family continue to grow and thrive. She was the family matriarch, dispensing wisdom and love in equal measure, always ready with a listening ear or practical advice. But everyone knew that a part of her was waiting, longing to be reunited with the man who had asked her to bore him forever. On a spring morning, when the desert was once again blooming with wildflowers, Penelope passed peacefully in her sleep at the age of 72. She was laid to rest beside Owen on that small rise overlooking the ranch, the spot where they had stood together so many times, surveying everything they had built. Their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren gathered for her funeral, sharing stories about the remarkable woman who had come to New Mexico as a mail-order bride and built a dynasty through love and determination. Emma read from her mother's journal, her voice breaking as she shared Penelope's final words. And there, on a beautiful spring day in New Mexico territory, the story of Owen and Penelope Russell came to its close. Not with tragedy or drama, but with the quiet satisfaction of lives well lived and love well given. In the years that followed, their descendants continued to thrive. The ranch remained in the family, passed down through James's line. Emma's writing about her mother's journey inspired countless other women facing difficult choices. Samuel's horses became legendary throughout the territory and beyond, and every generation told the story of their remarkable ancestors who had found love in the most unexpected way. The house remained standing for over a century, a monument to what could be built through partnership and devotion. And on quiet evenings, when the sun set over the desert and painted the sky in shades of gold and purple, it was easy to imagine two figures sitting on the old porch, hand in hand, watching the day fade together. Plain and boring, Penelope had called herself. "Bore me forever," Owen had replied. And from those simple, honest words, they had created something extraordinary. A love that lasted a lifetime, a family that spanned generations, and a legacy that proved that the most powerful love stories are often the quietest ones, built not on passion and drama but on respect, honesty, and the simple act of choosing each other, day after day after day. Their great-great-grandchildren still lived on the ranch, still told the story of the mail-order bride and the cowboy who had asked her to bore him forever. And they understood, perhaps better than any other family could, that true love was not found in grand gestures or sweeping romances, but in the steady accumulation of ordinary days lived with extraordinary devotion. The legend of Owen and Penelope Russell became part of the fabric of Columbus, New Mexico, a story told and retold about two people who had built something real and lasting in a harsh land. Their graves on the rise overlooking the ranch became a place where young couples would go, seeking inspiration for their own partnerships. And the words from Owen's letter, "Bore me forever," became a kind of romantic ideal in the town, a reminder that steadiness and reliability could be just as romantic as passion and excitement. The territory eventually became a state, times changed, and the world moved forward. But some things remained constant: the desert landscape, the wide open sky, and the story of two people who had loved each other well and built something that lasted far beyond their own lifetimes. They had started as strangers brought together by desperation and necessity, and they had created a love story that proved that the best foundations are built on honesty, respect, and the courage to be exactly who you are. And so ends the story of Owen and Penelope Russell, a cowboy and a mail-order bride who found in each other everything they never knew they needed. They lived, they loved, they built a life together, and they left behind a legacy that would endure for generations. Not because they were extraordinary people, but because they did extraordinary things with ordinary love, proving that sometimes the greatest adventures are the ones we live every single day, side by side with the person who sees us truly and loves us anyway. Their story was complete, their circle closed, their forever fulfilled. Two lives lived fully and honestly, joined together in partnership and love. It was, in every sense that mattered, a happily ever after, earned through decades of choosing each other, supporting each other, and boring each other in the very best way possible. And in the end, that was everything.